I want to bring in HuffPost's senior political reporter Amanda Terkel and National Journal Hotline executive editor Josh Kraushaar. Good morning to both of you. And let's put what the White House is doing in context, Amanda. How do they hope that John Kerry's visit and this new $1 billion aid package that we just heard about from Andrea might change the equation?
Well, I think that, the Obama administration wants to show right now as much support as it can from Ukraine, while, like Andrea was saying, providing this off-ramp for Russia if it does want to sort of dial down the crisis. What the White House hopes is that Russia would accept the offer of sending international monitors to ensure the safety and the rights of the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine. But so far, Russia hasn't really indicated that it's interested in doing that. And right now, the White House is getting a lot of support from Congress, both in the House and the Senate. Republicans and Democrats said there is a lot of support for moving swiftly in approving this aid package that the White House is asking for. Yeah,
swiftly on that, but as we just heard from Senator John McCain, Josh, some criticism as well for the overall administration policy. And how difficult is this sort of diplomatic dance that he has to do? Because on one hand, he wants to move forward. On the other hand, some of our European allies are pretty divided and even reticent about taking action against Vladimir Putin right now.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge. And we've heard a lot of talk from this administration and also from Europe, but we haven't seen a lot of action. And that's because the U.S. and Europe aren't entirely on the same page in terms of how they would counter Russia's influence here. And the biggest challenge for President Obama is to get the European Union countries, to get Germany, to get Angela Merkel on the same page when it comes to sanctions and when it comes to some of these punitive measures for Russia's intransigence in the Ukraine and in Crimea. So, the biggest challenge is to get both Republicans and Democrats on the same page back home here in the United States, but also to get the European allies on the same page and back up the words with tough sanctions and tough countermeasures.
Yeah, and the criticism has come not just from people like John McCain, but the conservative New Republican wrote about the October 2012 presidential debate in which you'll remember the president criticized Mitt Romney for saying Russia was one of the U.S.'s greatest global threats. Let's remind you about that.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
I'm not going to wear rose-colored glasses when it comes to Russia or Mr. Putin, and I'm certainly not going to say to him, I'll give you more flexibility after the election.
Is this the kind of opening, Amanda, Republicans have been looking for as they argue that the president has been naive when it comes to dealing with Vladimir Putin?
Well, Republicans have certainly been arguing that President Obama has been too weak and that a lot of what he has said hasn't really been backed up by real threats. And that's why Vladimir Putin, for example, isn't acting as sort of afraid as I think some would like him. But, President Obama is operating in an atmosphere after the Iraq and Afghanistan wars where there just isn't a lot of appetite either in the United States or internationally. There is not a lot of appetite for using force, for going in there. And I think he's trying to juggle both, having this real threat out there, but also understanding that that using force and going in isn't what is really wanted by the public at this point.
And in fact, Gene Robinson writes about that exactly, about that history, including Iraq and Afghanistan. Let me read to you from his piece this morning where he argues about this credibility problem, as he puts it. The United States, frankly, has limited standing to insist on absolute respect for the territorial integrity of sovereign states. Before Iraq, there was Afghanistan, there was the Persian Gulf War, there was Panama, there was Grenada. Critics who blame the Russian action on weak or feckless U.S. foreign policy are being either cynical or clueless. Josh, is that interventionist history kind of coming back to haunt us here in our dealings with Russia?
To some degree, there's a limited avenues that the administration has because of the public sentiment. But public opinion also doesn't like seeing the country sort of being held hostage to Russia's interventions. And I think, we showed the video of the 2012 debate between Obama and Romney. But I think looking ahead, 2016 is going to come into play because as Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton led the reset with Russia and tried to help normalize relations after a frosty period of time. And that's, look at the Republican comments coming out against President Obama right now. You can bet that Hillary Clinton is going to be in for some of those same types of accusations, especially if she starts to mount a presidential campaign. So foreign policy, which has been on the back burner for the last couple of years, voice to take center stage in 2016, whether it's within the Republican Party or also against Hillary Clinton and her record as that comes into fruition.
Josh Kraushaar, Amanda Terkel, good to see both of you. Thank you. Checking the newsfeed.